Hello, and welcome to the CSJ's Beyond Westminster podcast, where we bring you the real stories from across Britain's forgotten communities. This week, the CSJ's Policy Director, Joe Shalom, discusses with our guests the importance of financial education and what we can do to improve financial literacy across the country. On today's podcast, we're delighted to have Robert Halfon, Conservative MP for Harlow and the chair of the Education Select Committee, John Peers, CEO of debt management firm Lowell, Steve Corris, Delivery Director at MyBank, a financial education charity, and me, Carolyn Griffith, the author of the CSJ's latest report on this subject called On the Money, a Roadmap for Lifelong Financial Learning.
Welcome to the next in a series of Beyond Westminster podcasts from the Centre for Social Justice, where we're shining a light on some of the long-term challenges facing disadvantaged members of our society. Today we'll be talking about something us Brits famously don't like talking about all too much. That's money. And more specifically, how confident we are as a nation in managing our finances and making positive financial decisions. But let's be clear, we know that in the midst of a cost of living crisis, many people simply need more support and financial assistance, and the CSJ has been arguing strongly for increased help for families throughout this very turbulent time. There's also a long-term question here. In recent global studies, the UK have been found to fall well below international comparators like France, Norway and Canada in our financial skills, with 1 in 2 of us found to be unable to pass a financial literacy test run by the OECD. Meanwhile, 24 million people reported to the Money and Pension Service that they don't feel confident managing their money day to day, well before the new pressures have emerged that the country is now facing. So what can be done about this? Well, today I'm delighted to be joined by a number of guests who are very well placed to speak on this issue and to think about the way forward in building Britain's financial resilience. So, Steve, I'd like to come to you now. I mean, you're at the sort of very front line of financial education delivery. And look, let's be honest about it. People have been calling for better financial education for decades now, years and years. Have things got any better? Is practice improving? Are you seeing progress? And what can we do to really sort of kickstart that for the 2020s?
Yeah, it's a great question. I was there at the beginning of MyBank about 15 years ago, just before the credit crunch, 2008. It's interesting. So at the time then, there was a need to try and, I'd say, almost persuade people of the need for financial education. You would ring up a school or youth organisation, said you did money management workshops. People said, maybe I'm not sure this is needed. So I think in some ways, the agenda has moved on really far. People really want it. Everyone, whether it be policymakers, teachers, youth workers, everyone sort of, yes, we do need this. This is a good thing to do. So in some ways, yes, the agenda has moved on massively, which is clearly a really good thing. And as Robert mentioned earlier, it's on the national curriculum at secondary school age, which is a big win in terms of it being sort of seen as something that's really important. I guess in terms of the journey, I would say still to go is around, I would argue, quality and consistency and scale. So, in some ways, there is a lot of financial education out there now, which is great. There are lots of websites, there are lots of Twitter feeds and videos and podcasts and all sorts of other stuff. I guess if you think about it, like for anyone who knows what they should know and knows in advance of when they need to know it and are confident to go access that huge realm of information and guidance that's out there, that's fine. You've got Google as your best friend and Google will tell you any answer you want to know. But you've got to know what you need to know and you've got to be confident to do that. And clearly there are lots and lots of people out there who aren't that. And so I guess, at MyBank, that's sort of what we're trying to do is design high quality, consistent, impactful interventions to support people to, I guess, there is obviously knowledge and skills, incredibly important, but it's also with the confidence and the habits to be able to put those into action. So the ability to actually engage in a topic for us, I think, is the bedrock of being able to move forward and to develop a higher level of financial capability. So I think there's a movement in the direction of people wanting it doing. I think there probably needs to be a greater understanding of how it needs to be done in terms of the complete scope of knowledge, skill, confidence, habits, behaviours. And I think probably then there's some wider questions that, both society, politics, youth workers, charities, and everyone needs to answer, which is around, I guess, how it can be done in terms of practicalities. So, things like putting it on the national curriculum is fantastic, absolutely. I guess then sort of bringing that into sort of reality, well, then what does that mean to actually get high quality financial education interventions to our young people? How can we go about doing that? And if we think about schools as an example, obviously schools are a fantastic place to work with young people. They are incredibly tight in terms of time. I think Robert mentioned earlier, in terms of all the things on the national curriculum, time is very tight. So you have to sort of think about, well, if it's going to be done, how and when is it going to be done? And then you think, well, actually, who is going to do it? So, teachers, I'm sure lots of people on the podcast will know teachers in their lives who don't have a minute to spare in their lives because of all the planning and marking and everything else they need to do. Do we want to try and upskill our sort of teacher community to know quite some sort of relatively complex bits of knowledge and perishable bits of information and keep people updated on how to do it? Or do we want to have specialists, people who, fewer of them, but people who do more, who can go around and do lots of financial education, but a smaller volume of people? And it's probably likely to be a combination of both, but it's trying to think through how it gets done, who's financing it. There's sort of generally quite a lot of, there is money available for financial education within central government funds, local government funds. Very little of it is ring fenced. So I guess it's how do we sort of pull those sort of pieces together? And I guess sort of finally then we sort of have to see how all of these things combine in a sort of model that allows people to sort of gain a good financial sort of resilience. And I guess it's sort of also then about targeting those who sort of need it most. So I guess at my bank, we find that we often do sort of a baseline assessment of the young people we're about to work with. So we sort of get a sense of, who needs what and what skill levels they already are. We find quite a lot of young people in a mainstream school setting need a little bit of help. They need to learn some new bits of knowledge about AERs and APRs and how bank accounts work and these sorts of things. But there's also a proportion of young people who need quite a deeper set of interventions. Now, this could be because they've got low financial capability. It could be because they've got sort of lower financial resilience. They sort of can't afford to make a mistake in that sense. And so the ability to go and target resources to those who need the most, I think we at my bank have made some strides in doing that, but I think there's also some more strides that everyone needs to make to make that happen.
And how much of this, in your view, is about helping the parents? Because there's something that the point Robert made quite well, is looking at the whole family and how we help each other increase our financial literacy. I mean, does my bank do anything with parents alongside the young people in schools?
So we do. Some of our programs have the young person intervention with the accompanying like teacher pack and family sort of set of resources so that young people can do the activities in the classroom, take them home and apply them. And look, absolutely, for those opportunities where you can have a blended type of learning that's sort of both sort of slightly theoretical and experiential and has multiple sources, both the people, the educators and the family, that is ideal. And that in some ways is what we should all be aiming for. I guess this is where, partly financial education, but partly as society as a whole, we have to consider the practicalities of trying to make this ideal happen. So I 100% would agree. I think we should be getting more families and parents to interact with their children about money. That's a hard job, and I think we should go for it, and we should, as a community, we should try and make that happen. But we also have to appreciate that's a very difficult job to get this perfect scenario there. So any sort of work that we can do, both with parents and with young people directly, I think we have to go for.
I thank everyone for coming on the podcast to talk about this issue today. It is something that the CSJ will be continuing to bang the drum on and putting leaflets through your door at the very least, Robert. So please don't bin them straight away. And we look forward to you joining us next time in the next episode of Beyond Westminster.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to hear more, subscribe to our channel for more interesting content like this and follow us on Twitter at CSJ Think Tank for more updates.